Hello and welcome to episode 32 of the AutoTalk Weekly Wrap. I believe we're all caught up in regards to these episodes on podcasts now. So if you've got friends who haven't done these, or you're wanting something, or you even listen to the one you want something to listen to when you're running around this weekend to the tip or delivering cars or whatever it is, then go jump on your podcast app, find those episodes and listen to our hilarity for an hour or two. Something that's not so hilarious. You've had the spicy cough this week, Matthew?
Yeah. So, all listeners, just stay at least 5 meters away from your webcam. Make sure your computer's vaccinated, all that stuff. It's been an interesting week. I'm feeling all right now, but I had a couple of days where it was pretty rough. I know that some people have had it and it's just kind of breezed through them, but in my case, in my partner's case, we definitely had a few days where it was definitely worse than your standard cold. But we're good now. We're emerging pretty good now. Fingers crossed.
Awesome. And Graham, you're excited. You're excited for our Saturday night mandate?
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. Actually, yes, we're having a genuine 100% mandate. That's a pretty, as in a man. Or that guy, mandate. Oh, Rick, we love it. So you want to tell what you're doing? So in terms of an automotive fest, how good is this, right? So those of you that are old enough to remember, which probably means me, the 1980 movie called Used Cars, which I think should actually be requisite viewing for any dealership. Like if you've got salespeople coming onto your dealership and looking to train them, they must watch, if they can find it, must watch that movie. And it's obviously it's American, 1980. It's got Kurt Russell in one of his very first roles, and it is car salesman American style 101. And the Hollywood Cinema is doing a special screening with the original, or a copy of the 35mm print film, along with they have promised 1980 era commercial intervals. Plus the opportunity for a quick vittle of cup of tea and a cold liquid beverage. So we're going to head along to that, and it's about a weekend or so's time. But that movie, I tell you what, if you haven't seen it or found it on YouTube or Netflix, it is absolute dealership mandatory watching. It'll make you cry.
I thought it was this weekend. Maybe we've got it wrong. Anyway.
Yeah, I think it's next weekend. Yeah, well, I hope so anyway.
Fair enough. How does it compare to the somewhat maligned 2009, not quite classic, The Goods, Live Hard, Sell Hard? Have you seen that one?
No, I haven't. But have you seen Used Cars? Are you a used cars virgin?
No, I am.
Oh, you are in treat.
Yes.
Anyway, so there you are.
You should check out The Goods with the somewhat cancelled Jeremy Piven leading the cast on that one. It's pretty bad. But if you can find it to stream for free somewhere, it's worth seeing how bad a movie can be. So let's
fishing rods, and I'll leave it at that. Fishing rods.
Right, now let's move on to the news, and we're going to start with the new and used registrations for October. October was a healthy month for the new car sector, with 14,736 registrations, representing a 5% year-on-year lift, and adding to an overall year-to-date rise of 0.3%. The Ford Ranger led the month with 1,491 registrations. It's a big month for you. Of course, expected, seeing as they're delivering the new models, the new generation now, which I think they've got like 5,000 orders for. Trailed by the Mitsubishi Outlander 1,030 units and Toyota RAV4 746. Meanwhile, there were 7,772 used vehicles registered in October, a slight lift on the 7,375 used registrations previously reported in September. We're not comparing to last year because, well, that was just a bit of a mess. The Toyota Aqua was again the most popular import for the month, edging its Prius cousin. How are things out there in used car land, Graham? Because we're hearing stuff that maybe it's not all happy in the world of the rising sun car sales.
No, and it's not actually. I don't speak for all dealers, obviously, and I'm sure there are dealers right now having a cup of coffee thinking, no, we're doing pretty good here, we're not going to let on. But I think overall, everyone I speak to has said it's really average out there. And it seems to be a bit of a lack of consumer sentiment. And I've always said this, that the used car industry in particular is the canary in the coal mine around economies and people's general well-being. Not so much new cars, because there are different mechanisms that propel people to decide to buy a new car in the first place. But used, it's almost exclusively private vehicle purchases, and they're often people are looking to sort of either upgrade their existing vehicle or a bit of sort of a feel-good thing for themselves. And the first thing that comes off the shopping list when things start to get a bit tight is an updated used car. And we're seeing that. We're seeing consumer sentiment definitely pull back. We're seeing a decline in email inquiry. We're seeing a decline in walk-ins and people shopping, but not really looking to commit anytime soon. They're just sort of, assessing their options, looking to see what there is. And you almost get the feeling they're bringing a ruler out and just kind of measuring up where they are now for a buying decision that might be 1, 2, 3, or even 6 months down the track. And I also think there's been a bit of a shift away from the higher price in the market. People are looking once again to have a peek into that, the age-old $10,000 used import. That's what this industry was built on, was 10 grand used imports. And it's not there. They're really hard to source. But we're seeing people asking a lot more for that now than I have in the last 4, 5, 6 years.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting time. But to the side of the used cars, how's that battle between Mitsubishi and Toyota going, Matthew?
It's getting pretty spicy. I think obviously we're getting close to the end of the year, and there aren't very many more months for one to try and topple the other. At the moment, Mitsubishi still holds the lead for outright sales in terms of passenger vehicles. I think the number is something like, it's 14,970 in Mitsubishi's favour to 14,152. Toyota still leads overall, including commercial vehicles, 18% market share, Mitsubishi 15%. What I think we saw, and I'm not 100% sure on this, I think that October might have seen the Ford Ranger overtake the Hilux for year to date, which the Hilux has kind of been chipping away in the background. Obviously, Toyota's had they've had supply issues, but they've had more consistent supply of that model relative to Ranger, because obviously a new Ranger arrived mid-year, but now it's been blown out of the water, and I think it'll run away with it.
Mm-hmm. And of course, we have a new leader in the EV market. That's BYD. So well done, Warren, and your team out there at Atico and Mount Wellington. And your dealers, you've done a great job launching that brand in New Zealand. Touching on Tour New Zealand again, they have been named a Deloitte Top 200 finalist. Tour New Zealand's been named as a finalist in Deloitte's Top 200, specifically earning a nomination in the Best Growth Strategy category. Tour New Zealand Chief Executive Neeraj Lala says the brand's recent successes can be in part put down to adopting a more customer-centric approach while making the car buying process more transparent. It's interesting to see that a company that's been around for so long can kind of be in a growth category. They're up against Freightways, which I guess is also a long-held thing. But yeah, I mean, since Neeraj came on as chief executive, they certainly seem to have been reaching into some different areas, and he's been capitalising on the work of his predecessor and putting together their store system. I kind of feel like they've shaken off a lot of the old, Twitter just pre-registers or dump stock out there kind of mentality or image they had before, and they've really become quite an innovative business. Have they said anything about why they've got this nomination in the literature? Matthew?
Well, they do talk about sort of their focus on customers and their focus on transparency. And I think we've obviously talked a lot about Toyota in this show over 30-something episodes now. And I think part of it is, we can talk about EV this or marketing campaign that, whatever. Part of that just sort of goes with the territory of how transparent Toyota New Zealand's been this year in terms of issuing messages to the press, to the people, and trying new things. And I think it's important to sort of remember that some of the marketing strategy and things like that they're doing, I mean, at least they're having a go compared to some of the other brands, the other sort of legacy brands that you'd normally put them up against who aren't as prolific in terms of what they put out there. So yeah, credit to Toyota, and I think you're right. It is quite interesting that I guess, an old dog learning new tricks kind of thing to have a company like that being nominated for a growth award.
And Graham, they just build product that people want. I mean, that's the simple answer, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I mean, don't forget, this is probably the most recognisable brands globally, not just in New Zealand. So you talk about Toyota's success year after year after year. It's almost the default setting for many people for a new car, and it all of sort of the bywords that they put out there in terms of the sort of the reliability, the build quality that they trade off. I mean, whether that's the case or not, they've done a damn good job over the last 30 or 40 years in New Zealand of building that exact loyal fan base up of people that'll buy nothing else but a Toyota. I think there's been, as you alluded to, there's been a lot of changes in their strategy at their dealerships, and we know that from a dealership perspective, not all of it has been well received, or at least initially there were some concerns. But we forget, we're not the people buying the cars. From the public's perspective, I think that model works really well. You talk about transparency, and the way that Toyota have done it is to take away what suits the dealer and make it a model that suits the buyer. And I think there were some lessons to be learned from other distributors, perhaps, on how you actually should be selling new cars. And Toyota's made it their own, they've run with it, and I think it's been a credit to them that it's worked as well as it's had. But I just go back to your point you made about dumping stock in the market. They've got nothing to dump. They can sell and deliver here every single car they can get off the factory line in Japan. There is no dumping of stock. There's a bum for every single seat.
That's right. Yep. You order some stuff now, and I think on some models of RAV4 they've stopped taking orders because the wait time had gone out to nearly 2024. I think highest is you're waiting till middle of next year. It's a crazy time. On to a last-minute inclusion. MTF Finance has linked partnerships with AMI and Tower. Both AMI and Tower have issued releases announcing their signing of partnerships with MTF Finance. With MTF. Why do they keep calling MTF Finance? Motor Trade Finance, not Motor Trade Finance. With both companies saying the tie-up will further streamline the insurance and finance process. The statement AMI says this partnership is the latest era in its growth strategy and will strengthen its customer focus. A lot of corporate words there. Basically, MTF have come up with a couple of partners to help them sell insurance products alongside their finance. That's always helpful at the dealer end, isn't it, Graham? Another wee bite of the cherry through the one finance system. Yeah,
I mean, right now, any sort of tools you got in the toolbox are good ones to have. And it's been a really tough year for finance. The triple CFA and the changes there have just made such a huge change around how we finance, what we can do, what we can say. And I think right now, anything at all that we have that assists us in that line of product is a good thing.
Something slightly more controversial. Europe wants only zero-emission vehicles by 2035. The European Council and Parliament will enact legislation that will effectively ban internal combustion engine vehicles from production by 2035. EU negotiators secured an agreement with member states on the Commission's original proposal to reach zero-emission road mobility by 2035 ahead of the UN COP27 climate change conference. The move shows the EU is serious about adopting concrete laws to reach more ambitious targets. Now, I imagine they're talking there about not necessarily production, but sale, because I imagine there'll be a few European factories still building petrol-burning behemoths or lower-end small cars for developing markets like the USA. This is going to have a global impact because Europe is just. If you take of the four big powerhouses of the automotive market, you've got Europe, China, five: Europe, China, Japan, Korea, and the US. Whether the US is still a powerhouse, I don't know. And basically, you've seen Europe going all electric, China's pretty much going all electric, Korea's a fair way along the track. Japan's decided electrification, not electric, and the US is, God knows what the US is doing. I guess they're heading in that way too soon. I mean, we're going to run out of sources for petrol cars at the rate we're going. I mean, Matthew, do you think that's going to kind of kick more vehicles down here, or could this be more of a case of it sucks production back up to Europe when we may want it?
Yeah, I think. Well, I mean, you talked about brands who are going to still be producing petrol cars, and there's definitely quite a few of them. Volkswagen is, I think, probably the most interesting example. They're still going to be making petrol and internal combustion Tiguan's and things like that for markets inevitably probably like ours. Um, yeah, I think. I mean, in terms of how many vehicles that come here from Europe, it's it's not the biggest percentage, and we've had struggles in terms of getting supply of vehicles from Europe, and I don't think that's going to change. Even if they start to ramp up EV production, unless something big happens with semiconductors and that sort of thing. So it's just I think it's just another example that New Zealand's kind of along for the ride with this sort of stuff.
Yeah, I think there's still definitely the manufacturers are still going to be selling and building petrol vehicles for a long time to come. We're seeing both Audi and Porsche invest in Formula One, which is not going electric anytime soon, from 2026. So there's still definitely people wanting to put money in petrol vehicles, but hopefully, I guess if there's more production lines switching over, that'll mean more supply for New Zealand. There is clearly demand for that kind of thing in New Zealand. It's just a case of getting across a broader spectrum of the market. We're hearing a few more interesting things about electric utes. The radar now is being hinted going into Australia, which means it'll be coming here. We know BYD's got one coming along. More electric vans are landing. But I guess the more markets that go electric, the more we're going to be forced to go electric. And I guess that means all the petrol car buyers can just come and buy from the used import market, Graham.
Yay! Come and see me. I was going to say, first of all, this is COP27. Was it COP22? I don't know, whatever it is, which could stand. A cynic might say COP out, which means everyone's got to come along with something in the goodie bag, right? But this is Europe's thing. They brought along their little Hessian sacks.
Their private jets.
Yeah, exactly. Was it the head of BMW I saw last week who was saying this may not be a great idea? We're not entirely invested in the idea of dropping petrol internal combustion engines. And I thought that was an interesting little broadside across the bow at the head of that announcement. I think it was either the same day or just the day before. Obviously, they knew that was coming. So no, I think perhaps it's a case of the regulators are not necessarily in alignment with the global manufacturing base they have.
Mm-hmm.
And America, let's face it. You talk about America. What's America going to do? Right? Look, Richard, Matthew, we've all been to America. I've had 13 separate trips now to the States in my short years. They ain't going to go wholesale electric apart from the beltways anytime soon as a market. Like, they are leagues away from that becoming a reality in the marketplace. And a lot of it actually comes down to practicality as opposed to market desirability. That might be the big nut to crack of the future.
You said the Ford Lightning has a waiting list that's massive. Chevrolet is seeing similar demand for their Silverado EV. But I think it's more going to be a product-driven thing, and we've got to get the product there before you can really make too many thoughts about the future. Let's talk about a couple of cars a little more now. We've been to a couple of launches this week. Matthew, is the resident Honda Civic Type R fan. How was the launch of that car, the launch embargo lifted this week?
Matthew said there's some drool on your shirt, by the way, sorry.
Pardon?
There's some drool on your shirt left over from the Type R.
I tell you, it's not drool. It's very good. I think what I'm excited for down the line is that car versus Corolla GR when that eventually arrives. I think that'll be a really interesting scenario. I'm curious to see which will be more popular. Having driven the Yaris GR, I think that's they're different things. They're kind of focused on different aspects of hot hatchness. I think the Honda's a very sort of serious, aggressive, track times, anorak kind of car, and the GR is sort of the one that's more fun-loving and silly. And I expect they're going to be priced very similar. So following that launch, Honda confirmed the pricing for that car. $69 grand, which is about $7 grand more than what the old one was, which I think is pretty fair given that it's a fairly niche product. And obviously we've had a whole pandemic and all of this stuff around inflation in the time since. 235 kilowatts, 400 newton meters of torque, faster engine, stiffer platform, way better inside. As we know, having driven the normal Civic, it's got a way better interior. We only had about 3 or 4 laps on track with that car, so how much we can graph from that is fairly minimal, but it was really impressive amount of grip, and the amount of power, how much quicker it felt versus the FK8, which we were also lucky enough to have a brief drive of.
Now, I'm totally sideways discussion. Who else here is kind of struggles to keep pace or keep on the ball with driving manuals? I've been driving a Toyota 86 for the last week. It's the first time in frickin' ages, probably since the launch of the last Toyota Hilux, that I've driven a manual. And this is kind of one of the last cores of the market, these smaller performance cars where manuals still seem to be a thing. The 86, the Civic Type R, I think the Corolla GR is going to come with a manual as well. Graham, do you ever jump into a car, realize it's got a clutch and go, oh, how do I get these things to work together?
Well, my son, as you know, my son's just bought his first car, and he's bought a manual. So we actually go, because he's just getting his learner, so we go cruising every single night, so it would seem, in the manual. And for him, it's natural, because I brought him up from the age of 7 on the farm, driving manual stuff, trucks, cars, bits and pieces. But for a lot of the younger people, I sound very old saying that, are coming to us, look at gear shifts and they go, what does that do? What's that thing? Don't see them. You're right, an 86. I've got a couple of 86s here right now that are manuals. And we think that's a really cool thing. But the irony is we sell the autos faster than we sell the manuals. Who would have thought? And these are Toyota 86s. I was going to say, just a quick question for you on the Civic, Matthew. Has there been any word on a waiting list? And I'll ask you why in a second. What sort of wait list have they talked about?
They were a little bit sort of gun shy, I think, to talk about how many cars are coming in and that sort of thing. They underlined that the last car was really popular here. They sold 300 of them here. And I think they said something along the lines of that the first shipment of this new car lands before the end of the year. But in terms of wait list, I didn't hear anything. I suspect it's quite a big one though, because 2 days after the car launch that we attended, they held an open day at Pukekohe for Civic Type R owners around the country, where they could have a look at the new car and do some laps around the track with their cars. And a total of 96 FK8 Type Rs were in attendance.
Wow!
I expect a fairly big chunk of those people will have put their name in some sort of ballot or put their name down for a new car. It's a pretty high number.
So I was reading about the GR Corolla in Japan, as you do when you're researching a column, coming out of a publication near you. And as best I can ascertain, in Japan, they're having a lottery to enter a lottery to be selected for a GR Corolla. Do you follow that? A lottery to get a place in the lottery to be drawn for the consideration for a GR Corolla sometime in 2023 or 24. It looks absolutely insane. And it looks like one of those cars once again it's a bit like the first of the Broncos in America. Remember the MX-5 when it first came out, stuff like that, where people are just basically selling their firstborn children to lay their hands on one. And we're talking about sort of the last bastion of manuals and things. So a relative of mine who shall remain nameless, but Niraj, if you're watching, I'm sure you know who he is because he lives about 5 minutes away from the headquarters. He has just sold his GR Supra, and he was the first in New Zealand to have a privately owned GR Supra in anticipation, I believe, of a GR Corolla, in part because it's a manual. So there will be people.
Aren't they landing some manual Supras as well?
Well, yeah, they may well be, but that's too late for my relative who's got one of the first ones that were an auto. So, or Tiptronic, they will just fly off the shelves like a planet. They really will. And so brand loyalty, Honda guys the same. All the Boobar settlers be queuing up with their checkbooks, just ready to get one. Doesn't matter what it is, I want it, please.
Right, and on that bombshell, we'll finish. Now, don't forget, next week it is AutoTalk Live. Next Friday, if you haven't got your tickets, go right now and buy them. I've left that Wrap 15 code in place, punch it in, see what it does. And where we're doing the Wrap live from AutoTalk Live next week. So hopefully we will see you there live with a nice barista coffee in your hand, and then some lunch, and then some drinkies at the end. And we will be on this channel at the appropriate time or thereabouts. We have to be a little bit more flexible because of the fact we're part of a live event that has timings and so forth. So we will see you then. Thanks so much for joining. That's Matthew. That's Graham. And catch you later.